It's all right. When I print it, always remember two of the things that we're really doing. Everybody got the mics on?
Let's do green beans, yes.
Yes. Okay. Okay. I'd like to call the planning board meeting for the town of Topsail Beach to order. Is that April 22nd?
Oh, sorry, my bad.
Okay, yeah, minutes. That's all right. Freshman feeble memory, what is the date of today? I'm
The
retired.
24th.
I'd like to call the town of Topsail Beach planning board meeting for June the 24th to order. The first item on our agenda is pledge allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do we have any agenda changes? None. Approval of the April 22nd minutes. Everybody's had to do them. We've read them over and we've looked good to me.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Third.
The minutes have been accepted. Conflict of interest. Does any board member have a conflict of interest concerning any item on this agenda? No. Public comments? None. Introducing the new planning board member, Mark Rocket. Hey, Mark.
Hello,
Oh,
nice to be on board.
Yep, smile and camera. Discuss and consider and vote for a new chair.
But how do we proceed with this?
No. Basically, we discuss and consider who should be the chair. And I'm willing to do it. I mean, it is, I had, ever since the south end of the island, I've wanted to avoid the chair. Because it was very hard on me. A lot of people that I liked thought my mind was already made up, and it was just, it took a toll. But that's passed. And so I'm willing to serve as the chair if y'all will have me.
Yeah, and that's great. I think that you bring a lot of talent. I was wondering if possibly you would stay on in the co-chair with Julie as chairperson. That way she could have your expertise and help guide if that's possible.
Yes, it is possible. Do you want to be the chair?
I'm happy to if you guys want me to.
And I'm not, and
And it does not matter.
Oh, no, it doesn't. It doesn't.
I'm just
It's
thinking,
actually a relief for me.
well, I'm just thinking,
Well, if you want a break, I'm happy to do it. As long as I have you as a resource.
Yes. You will.
Constant.
You will.
Okay.
Okay. Do I hear a motion?
Do you have any comments? Do you have any questions?
Nope, I'm just here with this, so.
so I make a motion to have Julie Spence serve as the chairperson for the planning board and add to that Randy stay as co-chairperson for the planning board.
Motion on the floor. Do I hear a second?
Is this okay to kind of blend?
I think me vice chair.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Vice chair, okay.
There's a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay.
Thank you both.
You're welcome. Training. You're up, Wes.
All right. I'll come up here so you guys aren't craning your necks.
Okay. Yeah, good.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. Wes McLeod with Anchor Point Planning. Sorry that John is not here. I know we have 3 members that have been through this already, so this will be a bit of a refresher, but we do have a new member, obviously. Mr. Rocket, welcome. I'm Wes McLeod. I've worked with the town for a number of years over all sorts of items, land use plan, ordinance update, South End project. And we, our company provides these trainings from time to time, particularly with folks that we have an ongoing relationship with. So,
I've heard you many times.
okay, I'm sorry for that. So you all know kind of the spiel here. If you have questions, just interject. This does not need to be carefully formal. With that, I'll get started. So just to provide legal context here, our local governments are creatures of the state and have no inherent powers in and of themselves, right? And so across the U.S., there's two types of states: home rule states and Dillon's rule states. Home rule states, basically local government can enact any rule, law, ordinance, so long as it doesn't violate the state or federal constitution. They don't need permission, for example, from their state general assembly. In Dillon's rule states, that authority is much more constrained. The local government only has the authority that the General Assembly tells them that they have. So in other words, like if you want to enact an ordinance, you need to make sure you have that authority. In North Carolina, we're a hybrid of those two. Our local governments, so the town of Topsail Beach has pretty broad authority. But there's a number of things that our General Assembly sort of sets the goalpost on. And in particular, as it relates to our zoning authority. So there's a lot of things that we can and cannot do as a local government in North Carolina. And over the last, 7 to 10 years, our General Assembly has, made a number of legislative changes that have kind of curtailed our zoning authority here for local governments, and seems to be continuing to do so now under the guise that zoning is, having impacts on housing affordability and things of that nature. So we'll see what comes out of this next long session, but there could be some fairly drastic additional changes. I think some of the ones that have come forward that would be more or less alarming, luckily would probably not impact the town because you guys do not currently have wastewater, and you're a small local government. But there's been proposals at times that would have said, hey, if you're zoned for single family, you need to allow up to 4 units, period. And so you could imagine that would be a pretty drastic change here in Topsail Beach. So just to give you an example. As it also relates to you all, that's helpful to know that, hey, if we want to put together an ordinance that says, everyone's house has to be a certain color, there's preemption and there's prohibitions on doing that. We're not allowed to do that, for example. A couple other things, particularly as it relates to the Board of Adjustment. Board of Adjustment in town of Topsail Beach needs to function the same as Board of Adjustment in Surf City, as Holly Ridge, or the town of Black Mountain in North Carolina. If you're going to issue a variance in one of those local governments, it has to be the same way, regardless of the jurisdiction. Yes, ma'am.
First off, me.
Sure.
So let's go to your example of house color.
Yep.
And suppose we want to make the colors the same. How would we in Topsail Beach Planning Board give us direction as to how we could find out if that is
Allowed.
allowed?
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
High level.
yeah. I mean, well, if you got, chapter 160D is the sort of, for lack of a better term, the Bible of our zoning
That's
authority.
down here.
That's
Okay.
state of North
Oh,
Carolina.
okay.
Yeah, state of North Carolina, chapter 160D. And 160D-702 is what lays out kind of our zoning authority. And there's a number of exemptions or preemptions that says, hey, you guys can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. So, yep. And, Stephanie, as your staff representative here, also would know, hey, that's a great idea. Love that you guys are thinking about it, but we're not allowed to. Good question, though. Now, if you're an HOA, you wanna have an HOA and have at it and paint color and all that stuff, go for it, but not as a local government and not as, tied to your zoning enabling authority. All right, so, did that help answer the question? Let's just talk about land use decisions. There's four overall types. I know we have a commissioner here present too, and you're welcome to jump in here if you have any questions as we move forward. Same with Tom as well, or Rochelle. First is legislative. These are your policy decisions. This would be, anytime the Board of Commissioners would adopt a text amendment, but it also would be anytime they adopted their budget, for example. You guys play a role in legislative decisions for text amendments, but you're not the final decision-making authority. And those legislative decisions have what's called a legislative public hearing prior to them being approved. So, you got to advertise for a hearing. Folks can come out and speak their piece on whatever it is that's being proposed. Second is advisory. Those are not final decisions and therefore less regulated. You guys are primarily in the role of making advisory decisions. And for legislative text amendment, anytime there's a modification to your code, say you want to change the setbacks or change the landscaping provisions or change the tree provisions or whatever it may be, you are required to make an advisory recommendation that goes to the commissioners. Nothing actually happens. It's just a recommendation. And as part of that, of course, the commissioners are also not bound to your recommendation, whether for or against. And so if someone's upset with you guys on your advisory recommendation, they can't, appeal that to the Board of Adjustment or bring some type of lawsuit. Nothing's actually happened. It's just an advisory recommendation. Third is administrative. These are anytime Stephanie issues a zoning permit or a sign permit, or in some circumstances, if there's a site plan that's approved, commercial site plan or subdivision plat that's approved. The test is, does what's being proposed meet the terms of the ordinance? And if so, it has to be approved. There's no discretion. There's no, hey, well, it'd be great if I know the minimum lot size is 7,500, but we'd really like this lot size to be 8,000 or 8,500 square feet. The rule is the rule. There's no discretion afforded there, and the local government is bound to approve those proposals. So the property owners effectively have a right, to certain types of approvals. In you guys' case, I believe you guys are responsible for certain administrative decisions that we'll talk about. Those can be appealed if for example, Stephanie doesn't issue a zoning permit, denies someone a zoning permit, that can be appealed to the Board of Adjustment for them to seek relief. If it's an administrative decision before the planning board and you guys deny someone that believes that they should have otherwise gained an approval, that appeal process would go straight to Superior Court, not the Board of Adjustment. Yes, ma'am.
So I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
That goes, and this might not be the time to ask it or answer it.
Sure.
And Stephanie, this is probably directed towards you too. Many people have asked me, what's going on with that lot up in the channel? It looks like they're building a pool. It looks like they're building this. It looks like they're building it. And I recall a couple of years ago listening to the meetings, and I believe the gentleman that was presenting has a house on one side, and he wanted to put his own personal pool on the other side of the street, without going into all the details of what I thought I heard, because it's been a couple of years. It seems like back then the request was denied.
I did deny it. And
So-
then he appealed it.
So where does that appeal come in, and how would that have anything to do with what you're speaking about, Wes?
Sure.
Or does it not have anything to do with
Go
what?
for it.
So he went to the Board of Adjustments. He was denied the appeal because they decided that I had made the correct decision by the ordinance. And then he applied for a text amendment. which ended up going to the Board of Commissioners and they approved.
So it's two different decision types, or actually, I guess three. There's the administrative, the last one to get to is the quasi judicial appeal process. And then there's the legislative process to actually change the rules to allow what that individual wanted.
Okay, so then were all of these actions, and I'm not questioning they took place, but again, a lot of people seem to have questions and they speculate
Sure.
and it's
Yep.
misinformation. It's like, so was this series of actions done in meetings that were open to the public?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
so basically if people listen, even if they can't show up in
There was a
person, but if they
public
listen.
hearing for, there were publications, of course, for the Board of Adjustments, publications for the commissioners. I mean, of course, went through the planning board and the recommendation was made, and I don't even remember what the recommendation was from the planning board. Either way, it goes to commissioners.
Right.
So there was a public hearing held because there were changes made to chapter 16.
Mhm.
And public hearing held, and then they voted. So
That's fine. So basically, keep your ears and eyes open
Yep.
to what's happening at the
yeah,
meetings.
there were multiple opportunities for the public to.
And I don't think anybody was passing judgment whether it should or shouldn't, but oh my God, the rumors as to how this happened is crazy.
I think it was a technicality in wording. There was a specific word that prohibited it. And to change that word, we had to research that word throughout the entire ordinance because it could have changed other things.
Yeah.
It was an accessory structure.
That's right.
A pool is considered an accessory structure, so the text amendment was to change it to a principal structure. In
And
B1, only in B1.
that's right.
I
Yeah.
remember that was a contract. Okay.
It's customary that, you have to have a principal structure in order to have an accessory. And so there's a couple exceptions here in town of Poplar Beach. For example, you can have a dock without having a home on the property. But for the most part, like someone couldn't just put a shed on their property without first having a principal structure there. And similarly, same with the pool. So, yep. Okay, fourth is quasi judicial. These are formal actions where the decision makers apply discretion. This basically functions like a little courtroom process. There's certain rules around how evidence is presented. Folks, the board members have to be impartial decision makers. You can't discuss the case prior to the hearing. And so it is an entirely different sort of hearing process than a legislative hearing. It's actually what's called an evidentiary hearing. And so there's limits on who can participate. If the meeting's open to the public, but technically only those folks with standing are really allowed to participate and should be impacting the final decision-making process. Luckily for you guys as planning board, you are not, you don't have to deal with quasi-judicial decision-making. And so that's anytime there's going to be an appeal, a variance, or a special use permit. Now, here in Topsail Beach, the commissioners are the ones that hear the special use permits, and there's an advisory recommendation from you all as a planning board. But you guys do not go into a quasi judicial hearing. It is sort of just a preliminary review. All right. Okay. So planning board basics, and Rochelle will make sure you guys get access to all these slides once we finish this too. So you're welcome to write stuff down, but she'll make sure to share this with you guys. So you guys have a statute, state statute 160D-301 that spells out planning board rules and roles and responsibilities. North Carolina is a 3-member minimum board. All meetings are subject to statutory open meeting requirements, meaning that, there needs to be notice provided. Public is entitled to attend. They're not necessarily entitled to have public comment. You guys have that on your agenda. But the other details are left up to the discretion of local government. Like how many members is going to be 5, 7, 9. Topsail Beach, as the chair has alluded to in the past, I believe used to allow non-residents to participate, or maybe you still do, I can't recall.
It's still in the ordinance. There is an allowance for up to 2 non-residents.
Okay. Yep. And so you guys are unique in that fashion. I don't know of any other local government that actually has that.
It goes back to when we really didn't have many people here.
Right. Which makes sense. Yeah. And you all have had recently, over the past couple of years, you guys have had non-residents, participate, I believe. Anyways, you can establish qualifications for members, and then terms, vacancies, how attendance, is taken. This up together. Questions on it? All right. Just, we'll talk in general terms about local approval authorities, who's responsible for what. We already touched on a couple of these. So anytime there's an ordinance text amendment or a zoning map amendment. So basically that's anytime you're going to change your zoning ordinance or your land development code, or there's going to be a rezoning. Here, there's not many rezonings. Obviously, we've had one in recent memory, or proposed one, but for the most part, that's not really going to be, something that happens on a regular basis. You guys are primarily going to be getting engaged in text amendments. So that's going to be a planning board recommendation that goes to commissioners. There's a statement of plan consistency that is always required, and that's also in the statute. The planning board is required to include a statement that, is this amendment consistent with the guidance that is in your land use plan? And now staff help prepare that, but that is a requirement that's in statute. That's not something that Stephanie just puts together. It's what we're required to do. Anytime there's going to be an appeal or a variance, that's always going to be before the Board of Adjustment. Now, some local governments, their planning board actually functions as their Board of Adjustment, and that's primarily because they have a difficult time fielding a full, both boards of individual members. That doesn't mean that, the planning board has appeals on their, for example, on their agenda. It just means they would close their planning board meeting and then open up as a Board of Adjustment where their Board of Adjustment has and hear an appeal. Such use permits can be heard by, in you all's case, the Board of Commissioners, the Planning Board, or the Board of Adjustment. A lot of our beach towns, it is the governing board that's the ultimate decision maker for the special use permits. Subdivision plats, it can be anyone, can be you all, can be the commissioners, and it can also be staff. There's been one of the General Assembly proposals would require that all subdivision plats, and again, this is not going to be something that happens here often, would be approved administratively by staff. And so it would no longer, go to planning board or governing board for approval. All right, same as minor subdivisions. Questions about any of that? Great. All right, for you all, you all's responsibility includes, as we've alluded to, advisory recommendation for text amendments and zoning map amendments, including conditional zoning as well. We'll touch on conditional zoning briefly. And then you all also have responsibility for major subdivision sketch plan review and major site plan approval. It would be rare. I don't know how the circumstance could unfold that you would actually have a major subdivision. Someone would have to consolidate a number of what I don't know. You guys.
That's not the only way.
Yeah. It's unlikely that would. Is it 10?
More than 3.
More than 3. Okay. Well then, okay, I couldn't remember. Then I guess
Wait. Let me take that back. Sorry.
I know there's a 4-lot allowance for not having a road.
I think exemption is less than 3. 3 or less. I've never done this here, so honestly, I don't know.
Right, yeah, so it's unlikely to come up. It's very different than, for example, in Pender County that, they're doing this quite often. major site plan approval is more likely to be, you know, something that you guys would be engaged in. In fact, that did happen fairly recently. It just so happened that it was the town of Topsail Beach's facility. And I believe the trigger for that may be 10,000 square feet of impervious. And then, as I mentioned before, advisory recommendation on special use permits and major subdivision preliminary plats. Yes, ma'am.
I had asked, and I've been told a couple of things from board members, board of commissioners.
Sure.
My question is, sometimes the board of commissioner, planning board has no topics.
Sure.
And for whatever reason, that's the way it's happened.
Yep.
And I was told that all of the topics that the planning board addresses come from the board of commissioners. Then I was told by another commissioner,
Mhm.
you can create topics, you can bring topics to the table. You can do more than just wait for the board of commissioners.
Typically that comes from the chair.
Yeah.
So if there were something that you wanted to discuss, that hadn't been recommended by the board of commissioners or something like that, you would communicate that to your chair. And then they would contact me and then put it on the agenda, you know.
Right, and yeah, and so some local governments, they have, you know, it will be spelled out in the roles and like the planning board rules. Hey, planning board is not allowed to, you know, haul off on some, you know, project without the without the buy-in from the commissioners. So we have some local governments where, you know, for example, say it was this meeting, you guys wanted to do a project and you all agreed, hey, we want to work on, you know, parking lot design. I don't know, just an example. And in that event, then there would be, you know, a request that ultimately came before the commissioners. Hey, we want to work on an amendment for parking lot design, and the commissioners say, yeah, have at it, work on it. Here, I don't believe that's the case. But I think the thing that is important is to make sure that if you all did want to work on an independent project, to ensure that the entirety of the board was aligned in doing so, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? Okay. But, you know, there's some other things. It's nuanced because, you know, spending money or allocating staff time is, it's not a real black or white thing. It's kind of a gray area on, you know, allocation of resources and things like that, Mr. Chair, or former Mr. Chair.
Why? The statement you made in the beginning of the last few sentences, I mean, why is it important that everybody be on board? I mean, in a way I can see that, but it's not necessarily a requirement that everybody be on board for a subject, or is it?
For the planning board?
Yeah.
Well, I would think it would be helpful for the majority of the members. Doesn't have to be unanimous. But you all function as a board, right? Not individual members. And so I believe you do have the authority to establish a special committee in there. But you know, in the same way that, for example, the commissioners are gonna, you know, agree to work on a project or agree to, you know, approve some type of budget amendment, it takes the majority of those members, right? Not an individual member, if that makes sense. I don't know if that answered your question.
It does. Historically, we always, for decades, it's wait until asked, then take up the subject. Even though the ordinance all along has said we can look at subjects to investigate.
Yes, and that goes back to the enabling legislation where, you know, when planning boards were initially put into place, there was no Stephanie or Wes or anyone. You guys were more, you know, functioning in the roles that we, you know, I'm a consultant for the town, but would help you guys with, right? And so over time, you know, depending on the local government, that is sort of been a complicated topic. Especially where, you have a governing board that's your elected board, they're, for lack of a better term, the bosses, right? And so what happens if you have a planning board that's falling off and working on a topic that is completely contrary to what it is the governing board feels like you should be doing, or they disagree with that. And so, again, it doesn't say that you can't do that. But are you spinning your wheels? Are you, working on something that otherwise is not a useful, effort? Right? So you know what I mean?
I understand.
And so I think for you guys have operated based on past precedent. So.
Does the special committee, if a special committee is created under the planning board, does that group have to have the same requirements in terms of, what is it, if you have so many people together, it has to be public? So
Yes.
if we wanted to go back and talk about that parking lot, and we create a special committee about the parking lot redesign, but we're not doing it, form like this, it's a special committee is meeting
Sure.
and decide, how does that work?
I would need to go back and double check, but I'm pretty sure you still be subject to the open meetings requirements.
The safest thing is to be,
Yeah.
that would be my opinion. The safest thing is to,
Yeah.
right here, be.
Yes, that's right. Yep. Because, I believe that would be an ad hoc committee, and a quorum of you all would constitute, basically a quorum of the special committee would constitute an official body, and which would be an official meeting. So. But yes. Yep, yes, ma'am.
I was just gonna clear up the subdivision thing before we moved away.
Oh, thank you.
Exempt subdivisions are less than 2 acres, no more than 3 lots. Minor subdivisions are less than 5 acres, no more than 3 lots. Anything over 3 lots is a major subdivision.
Okay. But well, that, for you all, that makes sense. A lot of other places, a major subdivision, maybe 20 lots or something like that. So. And my goodness, I can't believe there hasn't been, I don't know that there's been a major subdivision here in the last.
I haven't done one, but they get real creative and get in around it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, that would not that I've been involved with that. Right, over 10 years, all right, so, again, you guys, Town of Apple Beach is not really engaged in, reviewing development projects to the same degree that, for example, Pender County would be, or even Surf City for that matter, because they have mainland, property. We did have one, of course, but, these are just some review limitations, just to keep in mind from the zoning standpoint. As you're reviewing development proposals, you're reviewing them based on, what is being proposed, and what is being proposed doesn't align with the terms of the ordinance. And so these are things, for example, that your ordinance does not address, and you all also should not be, concerned with, whether it's a chain, whether it's a local business, is it going to be owner occupied or a full rent product, low income versus high income. Again, it's probably not going to come into play here. Whether the project will be profitable. I've heard board members say, we don't think your project is going to make sense. It's not going to pencil financially. Well, it may not, but that's not you guys' problem, right? That's outside the scope of your authority. There is a vesting process here that's established in statute. If someone gets their project approved, they may be protected regardless of future changes to the code. That's just something to keep in mind. And we mentioned this before, but you must also approve certain development proposals at all the ordinance standards are met. That includes site plan, zoning changes, and sign permits or subdivision plans. So you talk about the chatter, Sue was talking about the chatter of the Facebook folks, and I can't believe that some says approving this thing again. Oftentimes, and this is again, I'm talking about projects in Pender County. The planning board has no other option than approve it. It doesn't matter if there's 60, 80, 100 people show up with pitchforks. If it is a administrative subdivision proposal and it meets the ordinance standards, the local government has to approve it. No matter if they feel like they're going to get their tires flattened, when they walk out the door. And so, sometimes that's something that can be difficult for board members, and luckily that's, with the exception of our South End project, something you guys haven't really don't have to engage in. Okay. Plat versus site plan, just briefly. Site plan is, for example, the new town facility that's already on a subdivided lot, shows where the building is going to be, where the parking is going to be, landscaping, so on and so forth. But then a plat shows how you're going to propose to divide up land. So someone may have a 100-acre tract, and it may show where the roads are going to go, where the lots are going to go, what are the lot sizes, what is all the infrastructure that is going to go in to support those new lots. Talk briefly about text amendments and rezonings, including conditional zoning. Per statute, all proposed amendments to land use ordinance or an amendment to the zoning map must be submitted to the planning board for review and comment. Planning board must provide a written recommendation addressing plan consistency and whether the amendment is consistent with your comprehensive plan or your land use plan. Those terms are used interchangeably. And then the commissioners are not bound by the planning board recommendations. So they do not have to, if you all, seek to say, we think this amendment should be approved. Commissioners don't have to, align with your decision. They can deny a proposed amendment. There is also in the statute, I believe, after 60 days have passed, an amendment can go direct to the Board of Commissioners, so long as it's been submitted to you first. Now, conditional zoning, you have your own rules in place for a timeline for that. And so this is a brief flow chart of your conditional zoning process. So this is basically the same thing as a rezoning, but it has a site plan attached to it. And it also allows for the local government to attach conditions to the project. And this is done through the legislative process. So here, similar to other local governments, there's a master development plan or a site plan. There's a public input meeting that's held by the applicant, not the town. And that allows sort of the first kind of presentation of the project and engagement with the general public. From there, the town and the technical review committee take a look at the project and provide any comments. And it's ultimately then sent to the planning board for public hearing, review, and recommendation. Now, there is a timeline within which after it is first presented to the planning board, so the planning board does have to make a recommendation. I don't recall, what is that now? Is it
60 days?
yeah, we changed it, I thought, to maybe 90 days. Which, is the good and a bad thing, because it provides some certainty that this thing is going to be moved on. But it also can create some complications on, compelling the applicant to, provide you guys what you need in advance of a meeting.
Yeah, that was actually used as a tactic by the South End. The surveyor Riggs would send his stuff at the last possible minute.
Yeah, and so it put everyone in a difficult position on being able to, make a reasonable recommendation or have the time to actually analyze what's in front of them. From there, it goes to the Board of Commissioners. The Board of Commissioners can schedule a public hearing, and then they ultimately can approve or deny that request. And I didn't mention this prior, but as of today, our governing boards are not bound to ever actually hold a hearing on a proposal. So whether it's a text amendment or rezoning or conditional zoning, it can get sent out of the planning board. It can arrive in the lap of in this case, the commissioners. The commissioners could just say, well, we're just going to table this indefinitely. There's probably some due process things as folks have paid their fees and everything else that, maybe it would be nice to hold that hearing, but they're not bound to, at least for now. There's been other proposals by the General Assembly to change that. I believe the latest one was that any proposal for a rezoning had to make its way to the governing board within 90 days or something to that effect. And a hearing had to be required, and the local government had to act on it, had to vote on it. So that hasn't transpired, but that just gives you an example of the, continued changes that are coming forward. Once, let's just say the conditional zoning project was approved, then it would allow someone to come forward and submit site plans or subdivision plats that would align with what ultimately was approved for that conditional zoning district. Questions about that? We hope that this maybe tool will not be used here again, but we don't know. At least not in that capacity. All right. You all are subject to conflict of interest provisions. This is straight from the statute, but you're not supposed to vote on any advisory or legislative decision where you would have a direct, substantial, and readily identifiable financial impact. That needs to be pretty black and white. Like you have to be a general partner on a deal that's being, that's come before you for a recommendation or approval. Nor can you have a familial relationship with the applicant. And that's pretty broad. And also includes the term there, other associational relationship, which I don't know what that means, frankly. But that's also in the statute.
To be determined by a court of law.
Correct. Yeah. and to Randy's point, I mean, the conflict of interest, if you feel like you guys ever do have a conflict, it's really a legal question. And so if you see something like, oh, I might have a conflict, send a question to Stephanie and she'll route it up to the town attorney if needed for a final decision on that. And so as an appointed board, you can participate in the deliberations, but you're not allowed to vote, which is a little peculiar. If you have a conflict of interest for a board of adjustment matter or quasi-judicial matter, you're not allowed to even participate in the deliberations. So I would say it's probably not advisable to participate in deliberations, and you would have conflict, but you're allowed to. And I'll just share, these are conflict of interest standards that are for quasi-judicial decisions. It's the same ones as we just mentioned, in addition to having a fixed opinion prior to the hearing and having undisclosed ex parte communication, basically discussion regarding the case prior to the case. And so that would be for any appeal or a variance. I left this in here. Yes, sir.
Question. So can we communicate outside of the board meeting or no?
We're going to get to that, but that's a really good question. The short answer is yes. So long as you don't communicate with majority of yourselves. Because otherwise you're creating an official meeting,
yeah,
and you need to invite everyone else to wherever it is that you're having your conversation, even if that's via email.
I remember too.
Yes, sir.
And if it's via email, you might find someone wanting to see your email.
Yes,
As we said, this personal email,
that's correct.
to make sure that none of the communication took place and minds were made up in advance.
That's right. And so to Randy's point, there's two things to consider. Yes, you can communicate, but by doing so, you're creating a public record. And And so whatever form that is, text message, personal email, someone can request to have access to that. And we'll touch on that in a second, but, don't write anything. Otherwise, wouldn't want someone to have access to. So as of today, local governments are not allowed, no longer allowed to engage in something that would be constitute a downzoning. And so that includes, for example, an amendment that could do something as simple as, I guess this could be major, but say you wanted to increase the front setback by 1 foot in the B1 district. We do not have that via text amendment. Forever, we've been able to do that through the public hearing process and so forth. Now, through this SB 382, local governments are no longer allowed to do that unless they have written consent from all affected property owners. So the town, for example, could propose to increase the front setback in the B1 district so long as you had every single property owner sign on that that is okay to do so. Very unlikely that that's going to be the case. And so this came about related to a dispute in Durham, completely unrelated to us, over something that was going on with landscaping at a gas station, and someone got one of the representatives to put in place a law that says local governments are no longer allowed basically to make any property owner's life more difficult than it otherwise is. There has been probably 100 or 200 bills now filed to restore our authority to enact, development regulations that possibly would be more strict than they are today, but nothing has transpired yet. So I think a lot of folks would have guessed that authority would have been restored already, but it hasn't, and I can't tell you whether it is or not. So, all right, Mark touched on this, but we'll go through this and then we're almost done. Thank you guys for going through this again. So this is your open meeting clause provisions. These also address your provisions on when you can go into closed session, which is not for you all, but for your commissioners. It's public policy of North Carolina that the hearings, deliberations, actions of these bodies be conducted openly. Each official meeting shall be open to the public and any person entitled to attend. Now, not every person is entitled to speak. That is up to you guys. You guys have, by your discretion, you put on there public comment on your planning board agenda for every meeting. You don't have to have that on there. That's not a requirement. So I think it's good practice, but it's not required. Folks are just entitled to attend the meeting. And then what is the kicker, and you have to be mindful of what constitutes an official meeting, and that's just any type of gathering of a majority of your members. All right, hey, let's all go get lunch, or 3 of us go get lunch at Beach Shop and talk about our agenda. Wonderful. You need to make sure to invite the rest of the town to join you for lunch, to hear what you're going to chat about. But I think the kicker is, and that often gets people, and folks are not trying to, bypass the public or bypass the law, but they maybe reply all to something. And it is about an agenda item or some other matter. You're going down the path of you're creating an official meeting and you've not noticed folks. So, reply direct to Rochelle. If you want something to be sent to everyone, tell her, hey, can you send this to everyone? Rochelle or Stephanie, I don't want to get in the middle of how you guys handle this procedurally. Good. Okay.
So if If one of us is gonna be absent from a meeting and we know that there are things that are gonna be discussed that we'd like to at least type of group have input or be aware of our input. That goes to you guys, to you, Stephanie, or to you, Michelle. For inclusion in the meeting, if you're gonna be absent. Yes.
That would be the best way to handle it.
Okay.
Yeah, and then, you know, it could be brought up by staff or, you know, Ms. Spence, your chair now, or Stephanie could say, hey, Randy sent this in, something that he wanted, it was a topic of importance, and then you would bring it up in the meeting, right? For everyone to be aware of, and also the general public. Good question. You guys are a small town, so, you know, if you guys are all at the same concert, or everyone's all at the bottom of the Topsail, whatever, that's fine. But just don't huddle in a corner and talk about the text amendment that's gonna be on the agenda for next week, right? Cool. All right, and then this is the one that Randy was talking about. This is what a public record is. It is anything. Maps, books, letters, photos, films, recordings, magnetic or tapes, artifacts, anything, regardless of physical form or characteristics. So you guys create a public record between yourselves, and you also create a public record anytime you engage with town staff. So four. Good. All right. That is it. I appreciate it. I'm sorry that John wasn't here. Yes, sir. Questions?
Going back to communicating and review,
Yes.
even if it's only two people, if you're discussing a potential subject, it would be wise to include either Michelle or Stephanie, because in doing that, it is now a record you can serve.
You don't have to, but you create a public record between yourselves,
Right.
and you're subject to a request.
Yes.
Um,
And my point is, how do you board a request?
Yeah.
From everybody.
Yeah, sure.
On a record.
yeah, you could do that. Yeah, that they would already have it.
But I mean, you still could be subject to them requesting your records
Yes.
in case they suspect there was outside conversation beyond what was submitted
Yes,
to
that's
myself.
exactly what happened.
Yeah, so you're still subject to that request.
Anything that was done wrong.
Correct. Yep. And I tell you what, I don't think that I've been involved with the past couple of years, something that was even slightly controversial that we didn't get a public records request sent. It is with increasing frequency that those are. So, not going on.
Would you speak to something, another, when people are asking these questions, I don't know the answer, but, I've been asked, what happens to topics that are presented at the Board of Commissioners meeting? And the topic is maybe going to be tabled for however long, and then there doesn't seem to be any more conversation about whatever that topic is. Does that fall under the statement that you made that there's no amount of time?
Sure, yeah, I mean, if it's a zoning matter, for example, it's a text amendment that you guys sent to them,
This could be any topic.
Sure.
This isn't just planning board.
Yeah.
This is just, I guess, a general comment.
if it's just general, that's totally under their purview. They can,
So the Board of Commissioners do not have, once they table the topic, they don't have to bring it up again?
unless there's something, I don't have their rules of procedure in front of me, but, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, their citizens could, show up at a meeting, public comment, hey, where are you gonna bring this item back up? Maybe that would help them to do so, but, they're not necessarily out of it.
So what you're saying, follow up, is when the Board of Commissioners really are not allowed to have conversations about that topic, they people unless it's in the public forum.
Well,
Was that here?
sure. Yeah, I mean, if it's a majority of them, and they're subject to the same open meeting requirements as you all. So the majority of them, they're talking about a topic that's town business. Then technically it needs to be an open meeting, it needs to be an official meeting. Now, if it is something that is subject to a closed session, that's a topic entirely different. There's 9 different reasons that a governing board can go into closed session. But even with closed session, if there's action that's taken at closed session, then that has to be announced as soon as they come out of closed session. Yeah, I mean, it's sort of, they act in their legislative capacity. If it's something they feel like they need to continue on to discuss, wonderful. If not, it's up to them. So. Yes, sir.
Question. A public comment, somebody comes up and gives public comment. Public comment, we get public comment. The board doesn't have to, they can say the comment and they don't have to do anything.
That's right. And I don't want to get into the way things are handled here procedurally, but in practice, it is supposed to, the comment, someone's supposed to provide the comment and you guys, that's it. No response, to that comment. After the end of public comment, if the board wants to address something in general sense, they probably could. But certainly in practice, if you were just going to engage with me during public comment, it's generally a no-no. Again, commissioners can choose to act however they want, but also that's generally good practice not to engage directly during public comment.
And how does it go from that public comment to something that the board of commissioners may or may not want to discuss first?
It's normally in the minutes.
Yeah.
So it is a matter of public record. So-and-so said this.
Right.
So what typically will,
Well, if the commission, so let's just say it was something, and again, this is commissioners, not planning board, but same for planning board. Say someone came and had a comment about something that was compelling to you all. Hey, at our next meeting, let's add whatever it is to the agenda, right? Same thing for commissioners. That's up to them.
and if we chewed on that for a while, maybe we wouldn't make that statement at the meeting, but then we could contact Stephanie or Rochelle and say that topic that came off that public comment,
Sure.
I would like to see it added.
Yeah, sure.
And
Yeah,
then chair decides whether it's worthy of being added.
Right. Yeah, you could take a formal vote or just, straw poll, hey, this is something y'all want to work on.
And I have been asked in commissioners meetings or in commissioners committee, again, to just look into something. Bring back some information, so that's another opportunity.
Yeah, I was gonna mention that too. I can't remember if you guys have board member comments on there, but commissioners also in similar capacity, that's sometimes an opportunity for them to, if it seems wise to address something they heard or whatever it may be, they can do
And I
that.
think that falls under the question that they asked, what happens to these topics? Together, pretty more about it, sure, because the board has the prerogative of not doing it.
Sure. Yep. Good question. Anybody else? All right. Thank you, guys.
The next item on the agenda, staff comments.
I have no comments.
And no staff comments, board comments. What's the size say for that? That's civil.
It has been,
This is actually.
Yeah.
Adopted, okay.
And I think, has it been certified now? Yeah, I think it has been certified.
Yeah, because we.
That's right.
Like a resolution for it.
And so we'll be,
Was
I
it,
think,
and
think we're waiting on the final, I thought we were waiting on this final certification paperwork from DCM. Sorry.
Were there changes made? Is it through the cycle?
Nope.
Okay.
It is either finalized or will be finalized momentarily. I don't have my computer. We will find out for you. Let me see if I've got.
That's all right. It's the answers to basically, it's close.
Yes. I'm checking my emails here. So you guys have already locally adopted it, and so you guys are subject to that plan. That we're just awaiting final confirmation on certification, which should be already find out on that. But for all intents and purposes, it's been adopted. If there is a text amendment, the evaluation of consistency on that. Not sure.
Yeah, he was.
Yep.
We just need to do that resolution.
That's right. So should be momentarily. The gentleman at DCM had some things, I think, things that happened. Oh, no, you are certified. Thank you. Yep, cool. Yeah. And as of, I believe, June 12th.
Any other board comments? Get a motion to adjourn. Wait, motion to adjourn. Do I hear so? All in favor? Aye.
Thank you.